With the success of the first game, you would expect Insomniac to easily be able to craft a fantastic sequel. And they definitely delivered. Going Commando is usually considered the best game in the original RNC trilogy. Most of what makes the series great was first seen here, and the game was a massive success. The irony for me is that for the longest time, I couldn't see it. Don't get me wrong, I don't think this game is bad. However, something just didn't stick with me as later games in the series did. I didn't know what it was, but I think I might have figured it out. Now, Insomniac Games knew they had a hit on their hands, and a sequel to the first game was greenlit almost immediately. In fact, Going Commando was put into development before the first game even hit store shelves. Now, I do want to address this. In America, this game is known as Going Commando, whereas in Europe, it's known as Lock and Loaded. Not sure if that's because of the innuendo not working in Europe, but it's something that happens throughout the series as we move forward. Going Commando only entered early development because the first game was having such a positive reaction with its playtest. A situation I doubt would happen nowadays unless it's something like Call of Duty. Mostly because companies don't want to take a risk on a franchise unless they know it'll work. Now, normally a quick turnaround for game releases would send red flags to me, but even the guys at Insomniac knew what they needed to fix from the first game to put into the second one. But before I ramble too much, let's get started on the story. And the story takes place an entire year after the first game. Ratchet and Clank have had their 10 minutes of fame for saving the galaxy from Drek, and are mostly just sitting back and waiting for the next call of action. Something that is exemplified by the title screen for this game, as Ratchet plays video games and Clank sits reading a book. I do like this though, because if you pay close attention to the game, you'll see Ratchet playing the first game, and Sly Cooper, and even Jak and Daxter. It's a nice little Easter egg. The most excitement they've seen recently was a weenie roast at Owl's that was 6 months before the game. As Ratchet says,
I guess no one needs a hero right now.
but Ratchet couldn't be more wrong, as the pair suddenly find themselves teleported into a spaceship sent by Abercrombie Fizzwidget, the CEO of Megacorp. And let's just say now, this guy's a bit of a quirky fellow. If you know, you know. He asked for Ratchet's help to recover a stolen biological experiment from a masked thief while offering Clank employment in the company, both of which agreed to the opportunities because, well, it's not like they have anything better to do. Now, this does feel a step down from saving a galaxy in the last game, but on the bright side, Ratchet receives full commando training and preparation. As for Clank, he gets a cushy penthouse apartment and becomes Megacorp's lead accountant. Good for him. After an off-screen 2-month training session, Ratchet is ready to kick some asteroid. Now onto this opening tutorial level, we are shown some of the improvements this game adds from the first. For starters, the quick select wheel will pause the game, whereas in the first, if you open the quick select wheel, there's a chance you can still get hit from an enemy. And, new to the series from this point forward, we now can strafe. In my case, holding the trigger buttons, the camera will be locked in place, letting Ratchet easily dodge enemy attacks. And the weapons you get will target enemies as long as you're aiming generally for them. Later, you can even modify the weapons to add lock-on. Not every weapon has lock-on abilities, but it is nice that you have the option. On top of weapon mods, you even have the ability to upgrade weapons as you kill enemies. This is something that is improved in Up Your Arsenal, the next game we'll be looking at, but at the very least here, it's still a good mechanic. Weapons can only be upgraded once, but most weapons are at their best capacity once you upgrade them. Plus, the same thing applies to Ratchet's health. The more you kill enemies, the more his health will increase. Something that is a huge step up from the first game, where you can only upgrade your health at a certain place in the game, and even then it costs bolts. Whereas this game, you can do it for free. Unfortunately, before we can get to it, the thief is able to get the experiment. Reporting back to Fizzwidget, he recommends going to Maktar Resort, where the Thugs for Less have towed a giant jamming array blocking the broadcast of the arena games. Looks like we're going to a casino. We also get the introduction to one of my personal favorite things about this game, the arena. A staple of the Ratchet Clank series from here on, it's gladiatorial combat broadcast across the galaxy from said casino. Side note, Maktar Resort is also one of 2 places where the tractor beam is actually needed for progression. Every other time we use it, it's either to get a platinum bolt or for an optional side path. After winning big in the arena and getting some gadgets and mostly money, oh, and fighting Chainblade, as we leave the casino, we receive a video from the thief showing that they have captured Clank in an attempt to deter us from our mission. And seeing as Clank is one of 2 of Ratchet's friends, we're gonna need to go save him. Too bad Al is only mentioned in this game.
I like him.
Saving Clank is a pretty fun section, having to fight these cleaning robots inside this nice clean city. And considering Megacorp is a company that borders on Disney levels of capitalism, I'm not surprised that the planets they own would be so sterilized like this. Anyway, after a few electrolyzer puzzles, we save Clank, but are now trapped in this room. A room I'm sure we can get out of easily with a wall jump, but I guess it was in their contract to let Clank be playable again. Speaking of Clank, while his gameplay has improved slightly, it hasn't really seen much change from the first game. For one, the bots will follow Clank and return to him when they die, so there's that. And they added a few bots. Unfortunately, that's where my praise ends. The lifter bot that's shown in this tutorial is literally only in this tutorial. Anyway, after escaping the room, we work together to pursue the thief across several more planets, dealing with different goons from Thugs for Less sent to protect the thief, leading to a confrontation on the planet Siberius. On this planet, we even fight the thief in a really cool section while we're jumping from vehicle to vehicle on top of a giant moving caravan. And although the thief does escape from us, we do secure the experiment and arrange a meeting with Fizzwidget so that he can reclaim it. During the handover, however, Fizzwidget accidentally maroons us in a network of caves on the desert planet Tabora. If I didn't know any better, I think he's trying to kill us. Later, as we run through the cave, we meet up with the thief, who must have followed us here. And it's revealed that
Whoa! She.
a female Lombax named Angela Cross, who used to work for Megacorp as a scientist. A plot point to this day that is still a problem for a few reasons. Mostly because it kind of screws with continuity later when they try and retcon stuff. I'll bring more attention to this later in the video. Angela warns us that the experiment is a threat to the entire galaxy, but instead of telling us why, she gives us the location of the testing facility it was created and advises us to seek out the evidence ourselves that would confirm her story. She also leaves us on the planet, probably because she doesn't fully trust us yet, which I understand. So, before we can even go to the testing facility, we're gonna need to get our ship fixed. And the only person here who can fix it is a strange space hippie who wants us to search the desert for crystals. This galaxy is weird. At least he's a man of his word and does fix our ship. Plus, any extra crystals we find, he'll buy from us. So, that's good. Oh, and while I'm at it, we also get the glider gadget on this planet. I'm a bit mixed on it because it's a pain to handle sometimes, but I do prefer it over the 10,000 unlocking gadgets that we get that just end up being tedious to me. Following Angela's lead, we infiltrate the facility and discover a video that reveals the experiment to be highly dangerous and capable of going on murderous rampages. I don't really have any other notes for this point other than we have a Giant Clank session and I just don't like it. Giant Clank for me is either hit or miss, and this one is definitely a miss. Mostly because the Thugs for Less boss that we have to fight in this section is just way too much of a damage sponge for this section to be enjoyable in any way to me. At some point we go to Megacorp's weapons facility and... hang on, I need to make a quick call.
Go for the squirrel!
Did you get the pic I sent?
Yeah, but that's a whole other galaxy. Any resemblance to my great uncle Softnick is purely coincidental.
Didn't you tell me the man got lost in space?
Yeah, what's your point?
Huh. This galaxy is weird. Eventually, Angela contacts us and reveals that Megacorp has duplicated the experiment and intends on selling them as a new product called the Protopet, which is what I'll refer to it as from now on. I really am starting to think that Fizzwidget has a few screws loose. That, or like the typical CEO, he doesn't care about the lives of his consumers. It would definitely fit in with the capitalism jokes the series has.
What? Now even the computers are charging us? That's it. This galaxy blows.
We go to warn him about the Protopet, only to be captured by Thugs for Less, as their contract with Angela was bought out by Megacorp. Captured, we find ourselves transported to Aranos, and aboard the same ship from the beginning of the game, now being used as a remote prison. Which, to be fair, leads to a really funny interaction.
I assume you have provisions for vegetarians.
Of course! Vegan or fruit.
Now, the prison break section is genuinely enjoyable, and one of my favorite Clank sections in this game. Not that that's saying much, again, the Clank sections are just kind of meh in general. However, on this ship, we do eventually run into the plumber again, who might actually be the only plumber in the universe. Well, I'll give the guy credit, at least he's getting overtime for this. You work that grind, man. We end up discovering that Angela was also captured by the Thugs for Less, and we track the mercenaries to their hideout on planet Snelvik. Sneevelk? Look, I'm having a hard time pronouncing it, and my notes are not helping. And just gonna get it out of the way, this is my least favorite level in the game. This section is probably the hardest in the game, as you fight a war of attrition just to get to the Thugs for Less leader, who is still a damage sponge. This time you don't have Giant Clank, so I hope you have some good weapons at this point. Eventually we do defeat him and save Angela, who decides she's been on screen too long and tells us to meet her at her home, where she gives us a way to get to Megacorp's headquarters. Intent on stopping Fizzwidget, we head for the planet Yeetle, where Megacorp's headquarters are located, only to discover that the Fizzwidget we've seen all game is none other than Captain Quark. This plot twist was set up throughout the game, and frankly, I think it's actually handled pretty well. Now, the game wants you to always be thinking of Quark during the behind the hero sections that they sprinkle in throughout the cutscenes. My problem begins, however, when you look at Angela. Let me explain. When she's acting as the thief, we see her attack her former co-workers, and she doesn't seem to have any remorse for doing so. Yes, she does blow the whistle that the protopet is a dangerous experiment, but she willingly lets her co-workers get eaten by the thing, and that's before she blows the whistle. Even if that's the reason she became the thief, that doesn't excuse the fact that afterwards, she still continues to harm other Megacorp employees. Hell, when we realize she's actually the good guy in this situation, there's really no repercussions for her actions. It would have been interesting if they wanted to keep her the hero if it was revealed Quark had staged the videos we saw her being a villain, just to make her look worse. In fact, it would make more sense on Quark's part because that's kind of his plan. Quark had set up this entire epidemic just so he could frame Ratchet and Clank and get the limelight again. It wouldn't really be out of the question that he would also stage events that didn't happen just to make his point seem that more believable. Saying all this, Quark isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, so I kinda doubt that he could have come up with a plan so sophisticated, but it would have been more interesting than suddenly trusting Angela because she's the only other Lombax we've seen in the series so far. That being said, I also know from personal experience that sometimes when crunching to meet a deadline on a story, you can't always make it the best you can or even want to. Insomniac made this game in under a year, so they probably had to go with this version of the story because that's what was ready for launch. Maybe if the game had an extra 6 months of development, or even a year, they could have polished this story out just a bit more and made it at least a little more believable. But as it stands, Angela's part of the story could use a little more work. She's been a divisive character in the franchise since then, and granted, part of it isn't her characterization, it's more on whether or not she actually is a Lombax. If it's up to me, I don't care. Let her be a Lombax, but explain that characters got it wrong, that Ratchet isn't the last of them. I don't know. There's ways they could solve it. Anyway, actually getting back to the plot, Quark tries to use a device that Angela created that would make the pets docile. However, it malfunctions and transforms the original protopet into a gigantic beast that devours him, leading us to stop the now monstrous creature. And this boss fight is just way too easy. I get that the Drek fight in the first game was a challenge, but I can bet that you'd be able to beat the Protopet without really trying. Once we subdue the pet, Angela returns with the real Fizzwidget, who Quark hilariously had tied up in a supply closet. Despite everything else with that part of the plot, I find that bit pretty freaking funny. Anyway, with Clank's help, Angela fixes the device.
Months of research and...
The battery is in backwards.
Oops.
And broadcasts a signal through Megacorp's TV transponders, neutralizing the Protopets and restoring peace to the Bogon galaxy. With Quark being forced to work for Megacorp as community service or something. At least we get to see him one final time as he gets to test out the crotchetizer.
Oh, one more thing!
And with that, we're done with Going Commando. And I think I finally understand why I don't enjoy this game as much as others. It's the same reason why I could never get into games like Dark Souls. It's all down to the sense of progression. Now, I don't want to say that Going Commando or Dark Souls are bad games. I don't even mean to say that this game is the Dark Souls of Ratchet Clank. But what I am getting at is this, that if I don't feel like I'm progressing, as if everything I do in a game is minuscule, then I don't have fun. And Going Commando, while having really enjoyable set pieces and sections that I genuinely enjoy, has one too many sections that make me feel like I'm not really moving forward. In some cases, that can easily be chalked up to it being a skill issue, but I've played every game in this series and even gone back to this one on multiple occasions. I don't think this is a bad game, not at all, but it's one where I just don't enjoy it like the other fans in the franchise seem to. It doesn't help that many problems I have were fixed by the next game in the series, especially because, unlike the first and third games in this original trilogy, I didn't grow up with Going Commando. In fact, my first time playing it wasn't even until around the time the Ratchet Clank movie came out in theaters, and at time of recording, that was about a decade ago. Look, if you like this game, that's good. Hell, if this is your favorite game in the series, even better. I don't want to take that away from you. But as for me, I feel like the next game in the series is probably my favorite in the original trilogy. So, join me next time as we finish off this trilogy of reviews. Let me just warn you beforehand, you may want to up your arsenal.